Welcome to Alchemy Arts Radio. I'm Jordan Grace.
And I'm Krystal Weil. You know, I feel like when most of us picture a tarot card reading, there is a very specific, almost cliche cinematic trope that instantly pops into our heads.
Oh, absolutely. The whole dimly lit room vibe.
Right. You walk off a rainy street, there is a buzzing neon sign in the window, velvet curtains everywhere, and like an overpowering smell of incense.
And someone sitting behind a crystal ball, dramatically flipping over the death card.
Always the death card, just for maximum drama,
Yeah.
right? And they ominously tell you your predetermined fate.
Yeah, and in our modern culture, it is largely treated like, well, a mystical fortune-telling party trick, or at best, a spooky Halloween aesthetic.
Which is wild because it is actually so much more than that. But in that pop culture scenario, you were just sitting there in the dark, waiting to be handed a script about what is going to happen to you.
Exactly. It is highly theatrical, and honestly, it is fundamentally passive. There is zero agency for the person getting the reading.
Absolutely zero agency. But what if that entire pop culture image we just described is actually obscuring one of the most sophisticated psychological technologies we have ever created?
That is a huge claim, but it really makes sense when you look at the source material we have today.
Right, so today we are taking a deep dive into a really intriguing guide from Helio Graphis Press. It is all about something called the Waite-Smith Mirror Tarot.
And our mission for this deep dive is to explore how this radical new deck reimagines the legendary 1909 Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot.
But the twist here is that they aren't doing it by changing that iconic century-old art. They are literally mirroring it. We are going to look at how Carl Jung's theories of psychology suggest that these 78 little paper cards might actually be, well, the ultimate mirror for our own unconscious minds.
It is a fascinating intersection of art and psychology.
It really is. So wherever you're listening, grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's leave that neon psychic sign behind. Okay, let's unpack this. What physically is the Mirror Tarot, and what fundamental flaw in a standard tarot reading is it trying to solve?
To understand the solution, we have to look at a pervasive problem in traditional readings, which revolves around something called reversals.
Right, the upside-down cards.
Exactly. When you shuffle a standard deck of tarot cards and lay them out, sometimes the card comes up upside down. This is the reversal.
Yeah.
For decades, readers have interpreted an upside-down card as having an entirely different meaning from its upright counterpart.
Usually it is read as like a blockage, a delay, or just the downright negative aspect of whatever the card usually represents.
Yeah, so if an upright card means success, the reversed version suddenly means failure or stagnation. It's a very binary way of looking at it.
It feels very rigid.
It is. But the guide points out a much deeper mechanical issue. From a psychological and cognitive standpoint, the moment a card is slipped upside down on the table, your visual system essentially breaks.
Because it becomes visual gibberish. Like the guide uses the example of the text printed at the bottom of the card. So you pull the magician card, but it is reversed. The actual written word magician is now upside down.
Right. Your brain cannot seamlessly scan and read it. You have to consciously decipher it.
And it goes way beyond just the text.
Oh, absolutely. The real issue is the artwork. Tarot is a heavily symbolic visual language. When you flip a card upright, those colorful, intricate symbols act like a light switch for your brain.
They just pop.
Exactly. Your intuition immediately engages with the shapes, the posture of the figures, the background scenery. But when that same image is upside down, that immediate visceral dialogue simply shuts down.
The intuition gets blocked.
Yes, because the visual cortex is struggling to parse an inverted image.
I was thinking about it like this. Imagine you are driving down your neighborhood street and you come to an intersection, but the stop sign is completely upside down, and on top of that, it is covered in a thick layer of mud, so you cannot even see the shape or the word statopi.
Oh, that is a brilliant analogy.
Right. You still hit the brakes, of course, but only because you consciously memorized that red object at this specific corner means stop. You are not having a direct, visceral reaction to the visual cue of the sign itself. You are relying entirely on memory and conscious logic.
That is exactly what happens. When a reader sees an upside-down card, they are effectively looking at that muddy stop sign. They have to consciously search their memory banks for the upright meaning first, and then logically deduce, okay, if the upright means X and it's reversed, it must mean negative X.
Which is basically doing mental math.
Right, it forces the entire process out of the intuitive realm and up into the conscious, rational brain. It entirely removes the opportunity for the unconscious mind to have a direct experience of the symbol.
Which totally defeats the entire purpose of using a visual medium in the first place. If you are just doing math in your head, you might as well just read a textbook. So how does the Mirror Tarot fix this upside-down star sign problem?
What's fascinating here is how elegantly it solves the problem by altering the physical mechanics of the cards themselves. Instead of relying on cognitive reversals, the creator of the Mirror Tarot fundamentally changed the format. Every single card in the deck is divided across the center horizontal axis.
Like it's sliced right down the middle horizontally.
Yes. On the top half, you have the traditional classic 1909 artwork drawn by Pamela Colman-Smith. But on the bottom half, there is a mirrored alternate representation of that exact same archetype.
Meaning, no matter which way you pull the card from the deck, there is always an upright image facing you.
Always.
The guide explicitly mentions that when you shuffle, you always read whichever side of the card lands facing you. There are no upside-down cards anymore.
By restructuring the deck this way, it effectively doubles the symbolic vocabulary from 78 images to 156 images. And crucially, it does so without ever breaking the visual intuition of the reader.
You never encounter an upside-down symbol that shuts off your unconscious mind. The specific example they give in the source material for this is so cool. Look at the magician again. On the traditional side, the one we all know, you see the classic magician standing up. He has his tools on the table, one arm pointing up to the sky, the other pointing down.
He is active.
Very active. His will is focused, and he is actively manifesting his reality outwardly into the world. But if you happen to pull the card the other way, the alternate mirrored side shows that exact same magician, wearing the exact same clothes, surrounded by the same tools.
But he is seated.
Yes, he is seated, eyes closed, in deep meditation.
It shifts the meaning completely, doesn't it? Instead of outward manifestation in the physical world, he is now manifesting his inner world. The energy has turned inward. It is a completely different psychological posture, but it uses the exact same visual vocabulary to get the point across.
And we really need to talk about how they actually made these new alternate sides, because reading about the process blew my mind. The artist, Garin, didn't just grab a paintbrush and try to mimic Pamela Colman-Smith's century-old drawing style.
No, he meticulously constructed the new imagery in Adobe Photoshop, using her existing visual resources.
The level of craftsmanship and patience required for that is just staggering.
It really is. Horner took high-resolution scans of all 78 of the original 1909 artworks and deconstructed them into individual microscopic components. He painstakingly copied, cut out, and saved individual fingers, hands, arms, facial expressions, folds of robes, and even tiny background elements like clouds and grass.
He essentially created a massive digital jigsaw puzzle out of a century-old masterpiece. The source mentions that to create just one of the new mirrored sides, some of the finished digital files have over 20 individual layers.
Which is an insane amount of detail.
It is. Now, they did use AI, but the guide is very clear that it was only used as a surgical tool to fill in the gaps. For instance, if an idea called for the magician's arm to be bent in a way that just didn't exist anywhere in the original 78 cards, AI helped bridge that visual gap. But it is overwhelmingly a product of obsessive human craftsmanship.
It is a labor of love, for sure.
Which actually brings me to a big question I had while reading through the source materials. I have to play devil's advocate for a second here. Wait, isn't slicing a beloved 1909 artistic masterpiece in half, chopping it up into 20 Photoshop layers, basically sacrilege to tarot traditionalists? I mean, why go to all that trouble instead of just hiring an artist to draw a brand new modern deck with these dual meanings?
I think a lot of purists might have that exact knee-jerk reaction initially, but the creators argue the absolute opposite. They view the Waite-Smith Mirror Tarot as the most faithful evolution of the 1909 tradition imaginable, because it resolutely refuses to depart from the original source material. Think about how many modern tarot decks are published every year that completely redraw the symbolism or update the cultural references to fit modern aesthetics.
Right, there are decks based on everything now. Cats, movies, you name it.
Exactly. The Mirror Tarot refuses to do that. It treats the original Pamela Colman-Smith artwork as a closed, sacred visual ecosystem. It mines her specific lines and colors for meanings that were already embedded in the tradition.
Ah, because the original deck wasn't just drawn randomly. They built it on a very specific, very dense philosophical foundation.
Yes, the co-creators of the 1909 deck, Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Colman-Smith, were both deeply embedded in esoteric societies. They drew heavily from the Western mystery tradition, Hermetic philosophy, and Kabbalah.
Let's pause there because those are massive terms. For someone unfamiliar, what do those traditions actually boil down to in the context of these cards?
At their most basic level, for our purposes, these are ancient esoteric traditions that view the entire universe through a lens of correspondence and duality. They operate on the principle that reality always has a manifest face, the part we can see, and a hidden spiritual face. It is the famous axiom, as above, so below. The inner world reflects the outer world.
As above, so below. So by literally dividing the card across its horizontal axis, with an outward-facing action on top and an inward-facing action on the bottom, the actual physical structure of the Mirror Tarot perfectly embodies that core Hermetic philosophy.
Precisely. Waite was a scholar and a mystic, and he always insisted that the images on these cards were not just flat illustrations of fixed dictionary meanings. He famously called them living symbols.
Living symbols, I love that phrase.
It is very evocative. The Mirror Tarot honors that original intention, but revealing the hidden polarity that was already present but unseen in the 1909 design. The meditating magician isn't a new character. He is still Waite's magician, just experiencing the hidden half of his journey. It is not a modern reinterpretation. The guide frames it as a completion of the original work.
That word completion really stood out to me. When you look at it that way, the classic upside-down reversal feels like such a blunt, almost primitive instrument.
It really is a blunt instrument. And historically speaking, Arthur Edward Waite himself was actually quite ambivalent about using reversed meanings. He didn't put much stock in them.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Many serious students of the tarot tradition have long argued that simply flipping a card upside down introduces this arbitrary, jarring negativity that the elegant symbolic system doesn't actually support. The mirror system replaces that blunt inversion with a cohesive, meaningful second image. Every single orientation now speaks with equal authority.
Okay, so we have established the mechanics, that these are living symbols, and that the Mirror Tarot completes the visual landscape without breaking our intuition. Here's where it gets really interesting. We have to look at the psychology of why human brains react so powerfully to these specific images from 1909. Why these specific drawings? And answer that, the source material brings in the heavy hitter, Carl Jung.
Jung is absolutely essential to unlocking this. To understand why tarot functions as a potent psychological tool rather than a fortune-telling gimmick, we have to grasp Jung's crucial distinction between a sign and a symbol.
Okay, break that down for us.
In his framework, a sign is merely a substitute for something we already know. A red octagonal sign means stop. A skull and crossbones on a bottle means poison. It is a one-to-one factual translation.
Right. A sign is fully understood by the rational, conscious brain. There is no mystery to a stop sign.
Exactly. But a symbol, according to Jung, is entirely different. A true symbol points towards something that completely exceeds language, logic, and rational definition. It touches the very edges of what our conscious mind can actually hold or articulate.
Because the conscious mind and the unconscious mind are essentially speaking two completely different languages, right? The guide explains that the conscious mind processes the world through linear narrative, logic, cause and effect, and spoken language. But the unconscious mind, specifically the deep layer Jung called the collective unconscious, does not use words. It communicates in images, emotional resonances, and ancient patterns.
And that collective unconscious is a profound concept. Jung argued it is a deep stratum of psychic experience that is universally shared across all human beings, regardless of their cultural background or the historical era they live in.
That is so wild to think about.
It is. The vocabulary of that deep shared layer is made up of what he famously called archetypes.
Archetypes. We hear this word a lot. These are those primordial templates or characters we see repeating everywhere, right? In ancient myths, in our chaotic dreams, and even in modern blockbuster movies. The hero setting out on a quest, the wise old man offering guidance, the trickster causing chaos, the great mother.
Yes, those patterns appear spontaneously across vastly different disconnected cultures because they are quite literally hardwired into the psychological substrate beneath all our individual minds.
And this is the part of the deep dive that really blew my mind. When you look at the major arcana, the 22 core cards of the Rider Waite-Smith deck, they map almost perfectly onto Jung's archetypal landscape.
It is a phenomenal alignment. Take the very first card, the Fool. He is depicted stepping joyfully off a cliff. In Jungian terms, that is the archetypal hero standing at the threshold of the unknown journey.
Right.
The High Priestess card represents the mysterious, intuitive feminine, the guardian sitting before the veil of the unconscious. The Emperor perfectly encapsulates the ordering, structuring, authoritative masculine principle.
And we cannot forget the Devil card. The guide explicitly maps the devil to the Jungian concept of the shadow. This is all those denied, repressed, or deeply disowned aspects of ourselves that we try to ignore or hide from society.
Which we all have.
Right, we all have a shadow. But of course, in psychology, repressed things don't just disappear, they just accumulate toxic power in the dark.
They certainly do. And the final card of the major arcana sequence, the World, maps beautifully to the Jungian concept of the self. The self represents the achieved integration of all those warring opposites, light and dark, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious.
It is like the ultimate goal.
Exactly. The artwork on the World card literally shows a completed psychological journey made visible. It features a figure dancing in perfect balance within a mandorla.
Let's define that word because I had to look it up. A mandorla is that almond-shaped halo you often see in ancient religious art, usually surrounding a sacred figure. It literally represents the overlapping intersection of two circles, like heaven and earth, or, in this context, the conscious and the unconscious finally united.
It is the perfect visual representation of wholeness. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it tells us something profound about the tarot. It is wild to realize that Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Colman-Smith were drawing from this exact same well of primordial imagery in 1909, entirely independently of Carl Jung, who would map it all out clinically decades later.
They were just tapped into the same frequency.
They really were. These cards are not just a random assortment of spooky Gothic pictures. They are essentially a highly curated dictionary of the most potent psychological symbols the Western esoteric tradition ever managed to assemble.
A curated dictionary for the unconscious mind. That is such a great way to frame it. So let's take all this high-level Jungian theory and bring it down to the actual physical experience. Imagine you are sitting at your kitchen table, you shuffle this mirror deck, and you pull a card. How does simply looking at this piece of paper physically activate your brain?
Well, it is definitely not a passive, purely intellectual exercise. The source material describes the act of looking at a tarot symbol as an event, something that happens in your nervous system as much as in your mind.
Okay, what does that mean?
When your eye encounters one of these archetypal images, your conscious mind immediately starts doing its normal, everyday job. It tries to name the objects, analyze the colors, and put the scene into a neat, logical box.
But beneath the surface, under the hood, something completely different is happening.
Yes. Simultaneously, the visual symbol resonates deeply with those ancient archetypal patterns already living in your collective unconscious. The guide describes this as a sympathetic vibration.
Like a tuning fork.
Exactly. Have you ever heard a tuning fork make a piano string hum across the room without touching it? It is like that. It is a profound recognition that you feel in your gut before you even understand it intellectually. You know it before you can speak it.
It's like when you stand in front of a masterpiece painting in a museum, or you wake up from a really vivid, strange dream, and you get that overwhelming, goosebump-inducing feeling of awe. The text actually uses a specific psychological term for this feeling, right? Numinosity.
Numinosity is a fantastic concept. Jung borrowed the term from a theologian named Rudolf Otto. Otto originally used it to describe the overwhelming, terrifying, yet fascinating sense of a sacred presence in genuine religious experiences.
Like looking at the stars.
Right, think of the feeling of looking up at the Milky Way on a pitch-black night. For Jung, when a symbol possesses that numinous quality, that profound feeling of awe or being touched by something vastly larger than your individual ego, it is undeniable evidence that the symbol has successfully built a bridge.
A bridge between the conscious and unconscious.
Yes. It has mediated a connection between your everyday conscious mind and the deepest, most inaccessible layers of your unconscious.
That perfectly explains why the classic tarot images feel so strangely familiar to people, even if they have never seen them before in their lives. But that bridge leads to another psychological mechanism that I found incredibly fascinating, which is projection.
Projection is the absolute key to understanding how a tarot reading actually functions in real time. In psychology, projection occurs when there is charged content in your unconscious, maybe a fear, an unacknowledged desire, or an insecurity that your conscious mind hasn't recognized or accepted yet.
It is hidden away.
Exactly. Because it is unacknowledged, your ego defends itself by perceiving that trait as existing completely outside of yourself.
This is such a relatable concept. It's like when you were at a party and you instantly, intensely dislike a stranger for absolutely no logical reason. Later, you realize it is because they are acting out a loud, obnoxious trait that you secretly hate about yourself. You literally project your own shadow onto them.
Exactly that. Or, conversely, projecting your own unlived, brilliant potential onto a mentor or a celebrity that you deeply envy. A tarot card, because its imagery is so archetypally rich and yet deliberately ambiguous, functions as a flawless blank projection screen.
So your unconscious basically looks at the scene on the card and populates all that ambiguous imagery with whatever psychological material is most pressured, stressed, or active in your psyche at that exact moment.
Precisely. And this psychological mechanism completely explains the phenomenon of why the exact same card can mean something wildly different to two different people sitting at the same table. Or why you can pull the magician card today and it tells you one thing, but if you pull that exact same card 10 years from now, it gives you an entirely different insight.
Because the printed ink on the card didn't change.
You changed. The unconscious baggage you brought to the table changed.
So what does this all mean for the whole enterprise of tarot? Are we saying the cards have absolutely no magic in them whatsoever, and a reading is 100% just a fancy 1909 version of a Rorschach ink blot test?
It is significantly more profound than a simple clinical ink blot test. The guide beautifully describes the symbol on the card as a living bridge. The physical paper itself does not artificially create the meaning. What the artwork does is create the specific necessary conditions under which the meaning that is already present in your depths can safely rise to the surface.
It provides the vocabulary.
Yes, it provides a visual vocabulary for the unconscious to finally make its hidden material available to your conscious awareness.
So to summarize this entire incredible journey, the Waite-Smith Mirror Tarot is not just an excuse to show off some incredibly meticulous new Photoshop art or debate the merits of AI tools. It is a highly refined piece of psychological technology. By ditching the blunt, intuition-killing instrument of upside-down cards and replacing them with a rich, dual-sided reflection, it honors the Hermetic tradition while providing a perfect, unbroken mirror for the modern psyche.
This raises an important question about how we actually live our lives today. We exist in a hyper-rational, screen-obsessed world that overwhelmingly prioritizes signs over symbols and cold logic over deep intuition. We have largely discarded the ancient tools that allow us to safely engage with the mystery of our own inner depths. This deep dive into the tarot is a powerful reminder that those depths haven't gone anywhere. They are still there, just waiting to be engaged.
And it leaves you with a pretty profound thought to ponder as you go about the rest of your day. If a simple deck of paper cards, printed with beautifully complex century-old art, is capable of acting as a perfect projection screen for the deepest, most hidden parts of your own psyche, what else in your daily life is doing the exact same thing right now? The strangers on the train you instantly dislike, the strange piece of music you are inexplicably obsessed with, the frustrating conflicts you find yourself repeating over and over again at work or in your relationships. What if all of that is actually just your own shadow, perfectly mirrored back to you in the world, just waiting for you to finally stop, pay attention, and read the symbolism?